Hi, welcome to Cycling Inform's weekly cycling tips. My name's David Heatley and here's what I'm going to be covering off. What's the best rim and wheel combination for indoor training? A basic idea of training with power and what the numbers mean. And more tips on cornering. So don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. We've also got a weekly newsletter that goes out by email. So if you're interested in receiving weekly tips about your cycling, please register yourself on that as well. Now Adam's asked the question, he's asked, would my training with the Kirkkinetic be more efficient with a carbon rim and the Kirkkinetic training tyre? Now Adam, it doesn't matter which wheel or tyre combination you put on your Kirkkinetic trainer. The important thing is to keep that combination consistent with all your training. Now the reason for that is that it acts as a benchmark. Whenever you start changing the type of wheel tyre combination on your Kirkkinetic trainer, it'll mean that your power curve or the resistance will change slightly. So the benchmarking that you're doing with your Kirkkinetic trainer will obviously change as you change your wheel. Now with a Kirkkinetic trainer, you're able to benchmark your performance based on your average speed for each of your interval sessions. So if you change your wheel, it's going to change the variable for that benchmark and it'll mean that it won't be as accurate against your normal benchmarking. Now does the wheel make a difference? Yes it does, but it's important to make sure that you keep it consistent so that you keep your benchmarking consistent. If you are using an indoor trainer here in the southern hemisphere to keep yourself fit during the winter, or if you're in the northern hemisphere and using your indoor trainer to help work through your season to make sure that you're in the best possible condition for your events and races, then please take a look at our 12-week training programs that we have on sale on our store. Now these are complete 12-week training programs that include indoor training sessions and sessions out on the road, and they also include functional strength training and mobilizers. Those are stretches. Now we've got 4 different types of these 12-week training programs. We've got one for aerobic base building, one for hill climbing, one for road races, and one for time trial specialists. Now if you're a recreational rider that's training up for recreational events, then the aerobic base builder and the hill climbing packages are ideal for you. If you're a road racing cyclist, then the road racing 12-week training package is the one for you. And if you're a time trial specialist, then obviously the time trial package is the one for you. Alright, so Ben's asked the question, could you give me some basic idea of training with power and what the numbers mean? Now Ben, look, I could talk about training with power for a couple of weeks, but here are the simple pointers on it. Now I've been training with power for over 4 years now, and I've seen some inconsistencies between the current power training methodologies that we have at the moment and what I've seen from the athletes' data that's coming back to me on a weekly basis. Now I'm just refining these power methodologies at the moment, but at some point it'll end up as premium members content in our premium members area on our website. But in the meantime, here's a little bit of information about power training. So when you put a power meter on your bike, you'll find when you go out for a ride that those numbers will vary a lot more than your heart rate and that they'll start bouncing around. So the first thing I recommend that people do is set their bike up to measure a 5, 10, 15 second average of power rather than instantaneous power. Now that'll help buffer out the variation in power numbers that are coming out of your computer and it'll make things a little bit less confusing for you. Now the next thing to understand about power is that you're able to measure your performance every time you go out on a ride. So you get to test yourself in every single ride. Now because you're getting these absolute numbers, it means that people try to start chasing their personal bests. They want to get their best 5 minute, they want to get their best 10 minute, they want to get their best peak maximum power output. But there's a big problem with this. You see, depending on where you are in your training cycle, you may not necessarily be peaking. So as you start loading yourself up with training, you'll find that your personal bests may become quite challenging to get. Now this is important because it's all got to do with the training load, fatigue and recovery cycles that we run our athletes through. So when I'm coaching my athletes, I say, please don't chase your personal best. Let me analyse the data and just go out there and do the training that I've prescribed. Now in the 4-week cycles that I run my athletes through, obviously at some point during that 4 weeks, we're going to be peaking them for that 4-week cycle. And that's where we start looking at those numbers. Now the other number to look at when you're training with power is your weekly TSS, and TSS stands for Training Stress Score. Now you want to make sure that this number is fairly consistent throughout your weeks, and you want to make sure that you don't exceed it by about 20% in any one particular week. So TSS is a number that we closely monitor in our programs. Now Tracy's asked the question around cornering, and I have provided some tips around cornering in previous videos. Now after my last tip on cornering, I got an email from a person commenting on the use of a front and rear brake. So my recommendation was that you use your back brake when you got into the corner, but in conjunction with that you can use your front and rear brake when you're coming into a corner to make sure that your speed's good before you enter it. Now when you get into the corner, it's important just to use your rear brake. So that's the big distinction around using your front and rear brake. Now if you come into a corner and you just don't do any braking until you hit your corner and don't get your speed right, then you're going to run into all sorts of crazy problems. So just to recap on that, when you're coming into a corner, it's important, just like when you're driving a car, to get your speed set for that corner before you enter the corner. And if you need to manage your speed through that corner after you've entered it, you use your rear brake rather than your front brake. So thanks very much for watching these cycling tips. I hope they've been helpful. My name's David Heatley from Cycling Inform.